people talk about blockchain, people talk about crypto. In your world, are they the same or are they the different?
Almost everything in my mind when we talk about technology are tools. Really abstract concepts are also tools. So I put up a video recently about socialism, capitalism, and communism. The fact that people seem to view these things as like a team. It's like pick a side. It's like who's your sports team? You die for that team, and the other side's the enemy. And it's like no, that's silly. These things are tools. And so in my mind, blockchain is really the same thing. So blockchain was a very interesting tool that was used then to create these cryptocurrencies. Decentralized ledgers, again, it's a tool. The tools can and should be separated out from each other. So it should always be about the right tool for the right job. So you'll get people out there talking about like, proof of stake versus proof of work, as in there's a winner. And it's like, no, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And it should always be based on what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. What's the purpose about?
Yeah. And so cryptocurrencies in general really were a means of introducing liquidity where it didn't exist before. And cryptocurrencies are extraordinarily more important than really anyone's talking about, even in the crypto space, because people see it as money. And I actually think that that's a destructive way of looking at it. And it's far better if you think of it as just an exchange of value or an accounting principle. And it's a motivational tool that can be used to facilitate activity on a network. So where cryptocurrencies are going to be utilized in the future is as an incentive to get actors to perform the role that the network wants them to perform.
Yeah, maybe I add one comment here because you talk about quite a lot of abstract stuff. I gotta add my comment here. Yeah, no problem. I like what you just described. It is it has way more meaning, right? When people view this cryptocurrency, because majority of people view it as a money. So if I can put an analogy here, kind of like today, we're the citizens in living in a certain nation, right? Like we're here in the US, we're spending like US dollar. So from the economic, citizen perspective, money for me is how I earn, how I spend, right, in my daily life and work. That's about it. That's a majority of people know about the money. Maybe I do a little bit more investments, blah, 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 right? That's all my assets. But money from nation or government perspective, it becomes a tool. So that means the meaning suddenly enlarged because we as a citizen never care about that roles or functions or responsibilities. So we never have a chance to exercise that tool, right? So we never know until the certain very like government policy makers or people who deal with this monitoring stuff, and they have to take care about the economy. So is that I'm putting this analogy that close to what you talk about this?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not one of these people that thinks like, oh, money's gonna kind of go away. I mean, it will actually, but not the way that people think. These things are money. I mean, really, they're analogous to money, but they're more than money. It's money and that's the piece that gets missed, I think, a lot of the time.
So it can be used for other functionalities, which is we haven't imagined.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, and it can be used to support things that might have been viewed as a pipe dream before. So certain aspects of society that we think are unobtainable, or frankly, we just think don't work. Like, let's take anyone in a capitalist nation. that basically pretty much looks at socialism or communism and just says these things are evil and they don't work. They're not looking at why they didn't work. And vast majority of the time, of course they didn't work. It's like you're trying to build a utopian society and then you're handing the keys to the kingdom over to people. Well, no shit. That's never going to work.
Right. Yeah.
But in these systems, you can actually remove the people. So you can literally set these systems up so that they are all mathematics. It literally just says, look, what do you want the math to be? And whatever the math you want to be can then be published. And people can decide, do I want to be a part of this network where the math works like this? Or do I want to be involved in this network where the math works like this? I actually think that this crypto in general would actually be a phenomenal way to handle government. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon. But you could imagine essentially state governments, essentially these would be perfect for, where these are independent networks that can operate in different ways and have different functions and provide different services to their members, where people can then choose to be involved in the network that they like. This is how the state governments were actually supposed to be structured originally.
Right.
The idea was that not all the states would have the same laws, they wouldn't work the same way, and it would be based on the economics of that environment, right?
Right.
So, but they were still geographically bounded. Yes. And so what crypto does is enable us to create networks that operate just like that, govern, they're governing bodies that have rules around how the economics actually work within their structure, but they have no physical location, which means it can literally be up to the people to decide what are the rules that I would like as a part of my financial system. And so this is why I think that you're going to start seeing these things change things in ways that people aren't anticipating. And they're going to start doing things that are going to be extraordinarily disruptive, to the point where I'm not actually convinced that if you were to say jump ahead like 100, 200 years, whether you will get a structure that looks anything like it does today. I wouldn't be surprised if you jumped ahead 200 years and you found that corporations just don't exist.
Interesting.
Because so the point of all of this is that whole right tool for the job. So I'm not saying corporations are evil and they shouldn't exist. What I am saying, though, is that they are a tool. And if they are the best tool for the job, they should be used.
Right.
But the best tool for the job right now will not be the best tool for the job in the future. And as that changes, people need to be willing to change with it. Otherwise, you're just holding us back.
That's right.
And I do think that things like corporations are outliving their usefulness.
Actually touch one of the trends I'm actually following called future of work. I think especially we're in the tech domain, we kind of sense that, right? This fourth industrial, we kind of go away from the industrial revolution, go to the fourth generation, and then and then it's kind of seeing those things which provides a new connectivity, right? And then but those new connectivity that is hugely wired based on the technology, like data aspect, the IoT aspect, and even involving this blockchain aspect. But unfortunately, we see our today's like working structure, right? We talk about working structure, which came to birth because of the industrial revolution, and then which is organizations start to hire people out of the rural parts, right? Came to the city and work for the organization. So now
you think about where the tech space is going. And the tech space will do this first. They will lead the way
because it's always
get into
tools,
like
right?
manufacturing and stuff. They're
Right.
not going to change wholly.
Right.
So you know,
That's
some of my comments about the 200 years in the future are a bit hyperbolic, just because like, yes, of course you'll have some corporations probably, but they may actually not operate like corporations. Actually, they may be more like federated networks, or conglomerates kind of thing, where it's just a group of individuals that have gotten together to perform some sort of activity, because it's better performed as a group. But the value and stuff would probably most likely be shared in a different fashion. And this is where tech is going to be paving the way on this, because it's easy for tech to do. When you start getting into physical services and physically building stuff, that stuff's going to take a while to change. But you already see stuff like Uber and Lyft and stuff, which look, they've done a great job. They're going to get pushed out of the market faster than anyone, mainly because they market themselves and kind of position themselves as, oh, we're just facilitating you to do your work. You're a contractor, basically. You're a service provider. We're just matching you with a transaction, right? But that's not how they operate. They operate like a business, like a company. It's not going to take very long before someone actually makes a decentralized network that actually is just facilitating the transaction. In which case, look, they're never going to be able to compete with that. And you're going to see that more and more with service providers and stuff. But tech is where this stuff is going to just explode, I think, because it's easy to envision how that works. Because you could imagine actually even having like technological business structures, like ideas that people have. Like, I mean, I know Spark One's actually interested in this, where I say, look, I want to build X, whatever it is. And I imagine that you'll have currencies that are developed specifically for building software. And you might have their utility would be around tracking essentially the use of the software. So you could imagine saying, I want to build X, here's what I want it to look like. And you could have, just like an open source project now, you could have people all over the world contributing code that are saying, like, this is how I think it should work, this is how I think this function should work, or whatever. And having kind of voting and stuff occurring to determine what gets in, what doesn't, and actually have it be, though, where this is where cryptocurrency's use is really going to be, is in the consumption tax. Cryptocurrencies are going to make consumption tax a reality. And it's not going to be a government tax. Consumption tax.
Consumption tax.
So, okay. A consumption tax is actually the tax mechanism that I wish we'd use. The idea being that you actually you tax the movement of funds, of money. So you don't tax people's income. You just tax all the stuff going around. So it's like every time you buy something, every time you move something around, every time you trade stocks or whatever, that there's, and the funny thing is people would go, oh no, that'd be horrible. It's like, no, guys, you don't understand it. You can work a consumption tax. If people had any idea the volume of money that moves around in our financial system, it would blow their mind. When people start telling me like, oh, how are you going to pay for this? I just go, guys, you're idiots. You can put in consumption taxes that are literally micro taxes. They have no significant impact to the movement of funds, and nobody even cares, basically, but they generate huge amounts of wealth. And so you can have these systems where you're contributing to some open source project, and literally every time your code is fired, you're getting a tiny bit of money. But the fact that you're kind of constantly getting that feed in, it becomes a reoccurring revenue stream for you. And then you can imagine just, binding that to an NFT or something where it's actually an asset that you're holding that's the rights to the revenue that then also becomes a tradable asset. So you could literally deploy some code out there into some project, have it be some reoccurring revenue that you're getting, that someone else could see value in that piece of code that could literally buy the rights to the code from you. And you just say, cool. And it's the difference of winning the lottery and accepting the one lump payout, or do you want the payments for the rest of 30 years?
Music industry, right? Like the composition, lyrics.
Music rights will work the same way. Video production will go that way. Game development will actually go that way. All of it will be performed in decentralized networks. People that are thinking of this crypto as this money stock market are just silly, and they have no idea what's coming. And that's why typically when I say, look, I have videos up on, investing. I am not an investor. I'm not a trader. And the reason why I'm not a trader is because, look, you don't need to pick the winning horse. You just need to get in. If you have any sort of amount of your capital, even the small portions of it inside crypto networks, you are going to be fine.
This sounds like fantastic opportunity, but also need to kind of do your own research.
Of the younger generation, by the way.
Yeah.
They're altruistic. They're more compassionate. I've been shocked. I joined a chat, a video game chat.
Okay.
With my son's friends, which I'd never done before. I'm a gamer, and I'd never done that before because, are you kidding me? I'm not joining a bunch of 12-year-olds. Yes. I know exactly how that conversation's going down.
Right, and they're awesome.
My God, they were the most respectful people I've ever had a conversation with. There's a bunch of 12-year-olds. I was shocked. I have so much more faith in humanity because of the children that I've interacted with, because of the young adults that I've interacted with. There's a TikToker that I found out last night that I was Oliver, what is his name? I don't know. Reminds me of myself actually when I was in high school. But I literally, I thought he was, graduate age or something. Kid's 18. I mean, he's going to hold political office at someday. It's guaranteed. If he wants to be, or he'll be a political commentator or something. But he's debating people on Omegle and stuff, on politics in the most polite fashion, being articulate and
intellectual
and eloquent. TikTok has given me hope in humanity. I swear to God, I'm joining this thing knowing it's a joke, and all these people suck, basically. And social media in general made me a pessimist when I was an optimist because of my generation. Because my generation used social media in the worst way possible. And the younger generation is actually changing that. And I don't think we did anything with the technology to facilitate that. So I don't understand why.
That's right.
But they're using it as a tool that is beneficial to them, where we've used it as a destructive tool. I think a lot of it actually has to do with the exposure that they've been given. So we got into, as much as we don't want to think about it, because we grew up without technology, we grew up in echo chambers. You're surrounded by only people that think the way that you do. You're surrounded by your family. You're surrounded by the people you grew up with. And so we existed in these echo chambers. And we all of a sudden got exposed to everything. Every new possible thought process, every new idea, every new concept. And when you're doing that from an echo chamber, it's easy to get into these us versus them mentality. That's where it's become. And that's where I see the political landscape just falling apart. It's actually because our generation is taking over the political landscape. And we have this very much so us versus them mentality. The newer generation doesn't have that. And I think it's just because of their exposure. They've been exposed from such an early age to so many different forms of thought that they can't criticize different forms of thought. I actually think what you're going to find is as this younger generation grows up, you're going to find more neurodivergency. And it's because of the exposure that they've been given to these means of processing information. So the neurotypical is actually going to go away, and the neurodivergency is going to become typical, but in a far more acceptable manner. And I think that this is something that we need to embrace. Because what you're going to get if you do this right, I mean, people's differences are such a powerful tool, and people don't want to think about it that way. And part of it has to do with the fact that our structures of our environments have required us to be rigid. It's all been about a rigid schooling to lead to a rigid career
path.
And you're trying to fit all of these people into these holes so that you can slot them in. And what you'll find is that's a very inefficient way of actually processing stuff. But we didn't have a tool available to help us do it any other way. But the more, if people are naturally shaped differently, the more efficient means of utilizing people isn't to try to shape them so that they can fit the hole that you want. It's to find the people that naturally fit the hole that you want.
That would be
to
ideal.
utilize them to fill the need. It will be more fulfilling for the individual, and it will cause the activity of the network to be more productive.